There is now an army in Los Angeles to confront protests, a showdown over the Trump administration raids targeting migrants. And that's the focus for our breaking news again this morning. In a major development, a battalion of Marines is set to enter L.A. to join thousands more National Guard troops who are there to back up police. That's a look at the National Guard on the streets of a Los Angeles suburb last night. U.S. President Trump is sending another 2,000 troops to join the 2,000 troops already deployed throughout the greater L.A. area. And we have some new images of the some 700 Marines expected to arrive today in L.A. These are images posted by the U.S. military on social media. From Associated Press, we have pictures of the Marines traveling to the L.A. area in a convoy of buses. The Guardian is reporting today the battalion is now at a naval base just south of the city. California Governor Gavin Newsom is accusing Trump of using the Marines as pawns. But Trump insists his decision to send in troops is saving Los Angeles.
Thank goodness we sent out some wonderful National Guard. They've really helped, and a lot of problems that we're having out there.
We didn't need the National Guard. Why on earth? What are they going to do? Do you know what the National Guard is doing now? They are guarding two buildings. They're guarding the federal building here in downtown, and they're guarding the federal building in Westwood. That's what they're doing. So they need Marines on top of it?
California Governor Gavin Newsom is going ahead with a lawsuit against the Trump administration for sending in National Guard troops without the state's approval. We were first reporting on that yesterday at this time. In another development we're tracking this morning, the protests over what's happening in Los Angeles are spreading now to more than a dozen other cities across the U.S. And we're seeing some clashes between protesters and police. There are reports of arrests as well. We have team coverage of the story for you this morning. Chris Reyes is in New York, and she's going to join us with the political questions around Trump's moves. And Steve Futterman live with the latest from downtown L.A. And Steve, I'm going to start with you, if you wouldn't mind waiting, Chris, for just a moment or two. It is now, just checking, 5 o'clock where you are. Yep. Just explain where you are and what's been happening overnight to this 5 Pacific hour.
Well, Heather, I'm right outside the detention center where many of the detainees were at least initially held. And behind me, you have some National Guard troops. They are here protecting the building. That's their duty here in L.A., to protect buildings. Overnight, we did have, again, the problems, the confrontations between protesters and police. I should point out the number of protesters who were involved in these confrontations seemed to be smaller last night. That's encouraging for local officials, but they were still enough to cause problems. The problems began in the early evening, around 6 o'clock. There had been a midday rally here in Los Angeles, and many of those people, there were several thousand people at the rally. A few hundred went to go in front of the federal building not far away. The police wanted them to leave. They didn't leave. That's when the problems began. That's when the confrontations began. Let's take a look at some of the problems they had last night.
Got it.
And you saw at the very end there, those are industrial fireworks, which the protesters have been tossing at police. They look like fireworks. There's a very attractive aspect to it, but it's not very attractive for the police, who those can be very, very dangerous. So that's what some of the protesters are throwing back at the police. The police, of course, have been using, when they need to, the pepper spray, the tear gas, the rubber bullets. And this went on all night long until the early hours, when maybe only a few dozen people were left, and they finally ended the actions for the evening. We do expect more protests today, and it's very possible we'll have these confrontations for a 5th straight night. Now, some of the aspects of the confrontations have spread a bit outside of downtown LA, but still pretty much in the downtown area. It's not spread to West LA, to Hollywood, to Santa Monica. That's a concern. There was more looting last night. An Apple store was vandalized in the downtown area. That's a concern. And there's also a concern that it could go into other cities. We did have some protests in Santa Ana, which is in Orange County, around 60, 70 kilometers from where we are right now. But Heather, as I told you yesterday, and we've talked already today, the big concern, I think, nationally is that, is this going to spread to other cities? Similar to what we saw in the George Floyd incident when he was killed. It began in Minneapolis and spread all across the nation. Not trying to suggest it will spread to that magnitude, but that is definitely a concern. And one more thing I'll point out, we do think that authorities are at least talking about the possibility of imposing a very limited curfew.
That's something you'll watch absolutely for us.
Yeah.
And you're right, Dallas, Austin, San Francisco, New York City. We saw some smaller clashes last night, Steve. I know you'll be watching that part of the story very closely for us. Thank you, Steve Futterman, for everything this morning. Now, from the ground situation, let's bring in some of the political implications. Chris Ray is following the political story today. And I was mentioning, Chris, at the outset, California is suing over Donald Trump's troop deployment. Governor Gavin Newsom is at the center of an extraordinary threat from the Trump administration that he could be arrested, Governor Newsom. So take us through that part of the story.
That's right, Heather. Good morning. And, you know, as shocking as it is to see some of those images from the ground in Los Angeles, to hear that the state could be under a curfew, in some ways, Heather, this is not an unexpected showdown between California and President Trump. This very blue, very democratic state has often been used by the president, even as he was campaigning, as the very symbol of what he was fighting against with his agenda. He's often called California too liberal, too lenient, mismanaged. Just recently, he called Governor Gavin Newsom incompetent. And Newsom, who, of course, is one of the highest profile Democrats and governors in the country, has often been the banner holder for any kind of pushback against Trump's policies. And remember, after Trump was elected, Governor Newsom even assembled a group of people to talk about how to deal with what they were predicting to be a Trump overreach with his second administration. And now you have this first one to blink moment. And as you mentioned yesterday, California filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, essentially saying that it avoided state sovereignty when it federalized the California National Guard without gubernatorial consent. And Trump was asked by reporters yesterday whether his border czar, Tom Homan, should arrest Newsom. And the president didn't reject the idea, which prompted this reaction from the governor.
The fact that I'm actually answering it by saying I thought about it, and not only did I think about it, that we've already processed what that may look like, that if they do get a federal warrant to arrest me, that the very act, if I chose to fly back to Sacramento from LA, could be grounds then for them actually having cause to arrest. The fact that we're even having that conversation with our folks.
And border czar Tom Homan, maybe, Heather, in an effort to diffuse the situation, clarified his comments. Have a listen to what he said.
Well, that whole thing's been taken out of context. They haven't crossed the line yet, but like any other U.S. citizen, if you cross that line, I don't care who they are, the governor, the mayor, wherever, when you commit a crime against ICE officers, we will seek prosecution.
And so, I mean, again, whether this is a real possibility, Heather, I mean, we'll have to wait to see if it actually happens. It would be a very shocking moment for this country if that happened, if a democratically elected governor of one of the biggest states in this country is arrested. But, you know, at this point, Tom Homan seems to be walking back those comments a little bit. But as you heard in what he said, he's also leaving it a little bit open.
And also someone who may be in the mix for the 2028 presidential nomination, or for the Democrats, too, as far as Gavin Newsom. So what you spoke to there, Chris, in terms of the political divide, that's something that we have seen as a constant since the first Donald Trump administration. And again, it is very much in clear relief now.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the polarization in this country is nothing new, Heather, but this particular issue with immigration is like a tinderbox. And we're seeing some of those comments on X from the president's stalwart supporters. Let's start with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is what she put out on Twitter. She said, President Trump isn't the one burning, rioting, and looting. That's the foreign nationals and anarchists that you protect. Talking about California there. President Trump, she goes on to write, isn't the one who opened our borders and funded the aid and comfort to our enemies. That was you and the Biden administration. It's all you, Governor. And then this from Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, also writing on X, deportations have never sounded better. She went on to write, retweet if you support Trump's mission to enforce mass deportations. She also said in response to another Democrat, nice try. Americans know that it was Joe Biden, not President Trump, who allowed criminal illegal aliens to flood our country, break our laws, murder our citizens, and wreak havoc on our communities. So again, what they're saying here, Heather, is that Donald Trump was elected particularly for this issue, for his hardline stance on immigration. And this is exactly what he's doing with these ICE raids in California. And the Democrats on the other side is saying this is a complete overreach from the federal government, one that takes this government closer to dictatorialship, essentially. And former Vice President Kamala Harris wrote on Twitter, like so many Americans, I'm appalled at what we are witnessing on the streets of our city. She said deploying the National Guard is a dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos. In addition to the recent ICE raids in Southern California and across our nation, it is part of the Trump administration's cruel, calculated agenda to spread panic and division. So again, what you're hearing from the Democrats is that Trump is picking a fight here, that there wasn't the kind of chaos in the streets that warranted this response. And then from the Republicans, what you're hearing is that this is Donald Trump essentially enforcing what he was elected to do, which is deal with illegal immigration.
Chris, thank you so much. If there are any briefings from officials in Los Angeles or elsewhere in the country, of course, live coverage today on CBC News Network. Chris Reyes is in New York.